This is Mainstream Metaphysics with your host, Nick Newmont.
So you're going to be away in a couple weeks.
Yes.
So you won't be able to be on the anniversary show.
I'm sorry.
I know.
I'll be so sad in Puerto Vallarta sipping a drink by a pool with an umbrella or
Right.
3.
Tiny violins.
Yes.
But anyway, I just want to say thank you for the years of support. And,
Oh my gosh. Thank
and
you.
You're welcome. And what you bring to the table, pun intended, as an astrologer. And also,
Well, my maiden name was Table in German. My last name was Tisch, which means table. So
oh, I forgot about that.
So I am the table.
Okay. Well, we'll table that for now.
Well played.
Thank you. All right. There goes our silliness again. Good Lord. Hi, Becca. Hi, Cheryl. Let's see. If you can't hear us, then there, you got your volume. Okay. Turn up the hearing aids. Carol, one of the things of all your endearing qualities is you really are a kind soul.
Oh,
okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And right now...
Cancer rising.
See? From the heart.
Yes.
From your moon.
Yes.
Hi, Audrey. Thanks for watching. So, we need more people like you right now. And as that old song, thank you to Burt Bacharach, what the world needs now is love, sweet love.
Yeah.
And what's going on planetarily at the moment? Why are people not as compassionate or humanitarian? And I know that when you watch election ads, oh yeah, we're going to talk about that nonsense. People are like going at each other.
Yeah.
People are very polarized right now. People are being unkind.
Right.
Almost for no reason.
Right.
What's happening in the cosmos?
Well, first of all, that's always fear. It's always fear,
Sure.
And our politics likes to get us all riled up because then we'll be passionate and then we'll take action and then we'll jump into the fray and we'll help save the day, right? So thank you for calling me kind. One of the things that is such a gift, as you know, about working with people is you can't help but really appreciate how much we're all the same, how much we all want the same things. whether you're a CEO or a janitor, you know, human beings all want safety, security, connection, approval, attention, significance. Like, we're all the same.
Right.
So working with people has made me fall in love with people. And then being educated was such a gift, because what I learned in college, I took a lot of public policy classes and sociology classes, and what I really saw again and again and again was we would be presented issues and we would be shown both sides of the issue, and with a lot of depth and detail.
Right.
So an argument would be laid out for, like, why unwed mothers should get social welfare, right? And why, you know, and then we would be shown the opposite point of view. And what I found again and again, no matter what the issue, is I always saw the merit of both arguments. I was always like, oh, wow, well, now that they fill in all this detail and all this backstory and all this data, I totally get this side. And then I get all the detail and the backstory and the data, and I would totally get this side. So one of the other reasons we're so uncompassionate, and then I'll get to the astrology.
That's all right. This is good.
The U.S. chart in Vedic astrology, which is the system I practice, is a
Right.
Gemini with the moon in Aquarius, air signs. The air signs like to sort of stay above everything. They're very superficial. They don't like to do deep dives. As a populace, you got to give it to us. We're not super deep divers. Give us the sound bites. Give us the quick, especially these days with social media and the decline of journalism and newspapers, right? We're not reading the New York Times and the LA Times and the local paper every morning like all of our parents did our whole lives. So, and for generations. So we're just being given these teeny bits of the story. And I promise you, everyone watching, when you only know the teeny bit of the story, you don't know the story. You just don't. So astrologically, not only is the U.S. chart, you know, airy and superficial and generalist, like we're good at everything, we're interested in everything, and we're endlessly curious. It's also immature. You know, Gemini's an adolescent. It's ruled by Mercury, an adolescent. It's a young, we're a young country with a young perspective and a young attitude. And part of what's great about that is we're very like, it's all good, we can do it, right? We're very like positive and youthful and exuberant and can do in our ethos as Americans. But we're also immature. And I think when we're afraid, and the U.S., we talked last time I was on about how we're in this crazy long cycle till 2032, that is when, you know, there's a breaking down of norms. There's a breaking down of traditions. It started in 2014. There's a breaking down of things we all like kind of could hold on to and take for granted, you know? And it's also a time where there's less clarity, there's more confusion. And then we're in a transit to the moon of Saturn. The U.S. chart has, in the Vedic system, has the moon in Aquarius. Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius. And again, not in your system, but in mine.
I get it. I understand.
So Saturn's coming along to the moon, and Saturn's the planet of fear, worry, insecurity, you know, wanting security. It's also when Saturn's around the moon in a person's chart or a country's chart, is when money is tight. It's part of why we're all feeling the pinch of inflation. We're all feeling like wages aren't keeping up. We're all feeling like worried what's going on with interest rates, what's going on with housing, what's going on with gas prices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why Saturn also, the moon is the emotions, and in the chart of a country, the moon is the emotional sentiment of the public. It's also the indicator of the public. Saturn comes along and makes everybody feel worried, stressed, a little depressed, a little restricted, a little heavy. And then it also makes us more black and white. Saturn says, here's the rules, pick a side, go all or nothing. So Saturn's making us more black and white, more afraid. And my heart breaks for everybody. The other thing I learned in college is that typically in social movements and in politics, the narrative of the good versus evil is trotted out. And both sides will say, we're on the side of good. We're kind, we're honest, we're blah, blah, blah. They're not, right?
Right.
So we otherize each other and we turn each other into the enemy. And then we minimize each other as just that. And we forget that we're human beings. You know, people are dumping their friends, dumping their lovers.
I know, right?
Breaking up with family, not speaking to their children because of this stuff. And that's where I just want to say, like, hey, world.
Right.
I just want to give everyone a hug. We've all been through so much the last few years. And again, everyone's heart is in the right place. We all want the same things. So I just want to appeal to everyone's Jupiter side, not their Saturn side. The planet of compassion and wisdom and being able to see the big picture and being able to come from generosity and faith and optimism. We have to, you know, really lean into Jupiter and tell Saturn it's all going to work out. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting from a channeling standpoint. Since the last time you were on, what some of my spirit guides told me is that the problem isn't with the candidates, it's with the people. And they said there's too much fear that the wrong candidate is going to get elected.
Right.
And they said both people that support both parties are doing this. And it's a very strong fear that the wrong one is going to get in.
Yeah,
and they said
both sides are terrified.
Right.
Truly.
And so basically our fear is very consuming and becomes very pervasive.
Yeah.
So we have to change. You know,
and then we get addicted, right? To the
of course.
news and the headlines and and I just want to encourage everyone to step away, back away. It's an addiction. And
right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You know, some years ago, Merlin said, and I think it goes back to the last presidential election, that he said that people vote selfishly. And he said that if people would vote for the person who's better for the masses, then the right person would get in. Now, these are spirit guides that are talking, and they see way more than we do, but we only see what we see.
Yeah. Well, the Vedas talk about epochs or, you know, eons of time, cycles and seasons of the earth, and they last 26,000 years. They're really long.
Right.
And there's different levels of consciousness in each of the different epochs, basically. They're called yugas. And there's controversy about which one we're in, but there's 5 levels. And we're either in the lowest and the darkest level, hello, for 26,000 years, or we're in the next one up. And the writings that describe the next one up is the one I think we're in, based on what I've studied.
Sure.
The writings describe it, and they say the politicians will be rich but of poor character. People of high character, people with spiritual advancement, spiritual knowledge, spiritual consciousness will be poor. Will not have the resources, will not have the power. And isn't that amazing? It also says this is a time of magic. Like the fact that we're sitting here and people out in who knows where can see us is so cool.
Right.
While we're speaking in real time. So, you know, we do live in a time of magic.
No doubt.
But I think it can easily be argued that our politicians have a lot of money, but not always a lot of wisdom, you know? And
well, when we started the conversation, I was talking about caring, humanitarianism, compassion.
Yeah.
What we feel a lot of times is they don't care.
Right.
That's how people feel.
Yeah.
Is that the governing individuals don't care.
And that they can't even vote or govern the way they would care to, that they're so beholden and in bed with agencies with other agendas,
right?
You know, people that gave them their funding, you know, and so this is where I always say, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like the whole system is broken, and until we get lobbying out, until we change campaign finance, until we really look at all of our agencies, people think, oh, the FDA and the NIH, they're so pure. No, they're in bed with big pharma, and ag is in bed with big oil, and the EPA is in bed with the polluters. Like they're all financially funded by, they're not just purely funded by the taxpayers. They're funded by it's like the fox is guarding the hen house. And so this is why it's a mess.
Right. And there are a lot of things that you and I are aware of, and a lot of my viewers are aware of, that the regular news never says.
And they can't, because who's paying for them?
Yes.
Big pharma, big ag, big oil, big, right? 70% of your funding comes from the foxes, are you going to report on them?
No, of course not.
Yeah. So this
then
is
you're
again
biting the hand that feeds you.
right. This is where it gets pretty, and I don't mean to be discouraged, but it gets very discouraging for the average Joe to go, well, how can I know what's true, and how can I get the full perspective of the whole story?
Sure.
And who do I listen to? Who do I trust?
And the most politically correct statement that I've made for months is, the truth is we don't know what the truth is.
Right.
That's where it is. However,
the planets don't lie.
No, the planets don't lie. Well, it's a different consciousness.
Yeah. Cosmic consciousness.
Right. But there are things that are going on. You know, when you go back, and I'm sitting here looking at the Western chart of the United States, when we go back, you know, a year and a half ago, when Pluto aligned with Pluto, and Pluto can only go around a chart every 248 years.
Yes.
All right, so that's huge, and it happened in the House of Finance. That was the beginning of transitions and transformations regarding money. And there are things that have just happened where banking systems have changed. There are things that are now in motion.
Well, they want us to have a digital dollar. They want to take away cash.
But it's bigger than
You
that.
know?
It's
Okay.
it's how things are transacted.
Okay.
It's not just what's in your wallet.
Uh-huh.
It's way more than that.
Interesting.
And there are major shifts that I have alluded to for the last couple of years.
Uh-huh.
And these are things that are in motion that will really benefit, you know, mankind. And so what
Oh,
you will
great.
see, what you are going to see somewhere in the next year and a half, is things go on like this.
For the better?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I love it. I'm
Yes.
so glad to hear that.
But there's a lot of things, like I said, that just aren't talked about, and
Right.
it's not the kind of thing where you just call your local stockbroker, and
Right.
there's a lot of change that's already in action, not going to happen. It's happening now.
Okay.
Now, when you were talking about the United States,
Yes.
as a Gemini in Vedic,
Yes,
you know,
it's got 4 planets in Gemini.
but the funny thing is
Like
that the
a
United States,
quintuple.
right? The United States numerologically is a 5, and
Oh, that's fun.
which means it can be a jack of all trades and
Why,
master
we're
of none.
fun. Right.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But you remember the symbol, when you get into ancient symbology, the symbol for the 5 is the pentagram, which means energy is going like this all the time. It's bouncing around, all right? It's very high energy, and it picks up speed. So it's, and the number 5, when you get into the negative connotations of 5, it's scattering, which could be time, energy, money, but it's capable. 5 is very charismatic. You know, it's a lot of high energy. It's star energy. So there is this
Nice.
this mystical, you know, part to the United States. Why are people drawn to it? Because it's represented as 5, and in the way people refer to the United States, the number 5 is all about freedom, the ability to come and go as you please. So
An adventure, too, right?
right. So yeah. So it's never boring when it's the number 5. Okay.
Love it.
So anyway, so let's go back to you and where things are.
Okay.
Like in the chart of the country, and
Yeah.
what's the chart of the people saying?
Well, that we're in a tough time for a while.
Yes.
Till 2032, and what I see improving next year is the U.S. goes into its Jupiter return, and Jupiter moves into Gemini, where there's 4 planets, and it'll be 5th from the moon of the U.S., which is beautiful.
Right.
So that can be quite helpful. I mean, one of the things I love about the U.S. chart is it's a very optimistic, protected chart, which is part of why there's been other than 9/11, there's been no invasion on our soil.
Right.
Even though we're constantly at war or in proxy wars, I hate to say it, we're constantly in some sort of military something with somebody, which is because we have Mars in the 7th house in the U.S. chart. The 7th house is other countries.
And in Western, too.
And Mars is war.
Right, god of war.
Yeah, and it's squaring Saturn, which is pretty darn violent. We're a violent people. I mean, look around, right?
We're rebels.
Yes.
The people that settled this country.
Yes. Right. Upstarts. Yeah.
Interlopers.
Interlopers. Yes. But anyway, that I'm looking forward to that. So there will be like highs and lows within. I don't mean to suggest like everything's going to be terrible between now and 2032. Of course not. But overall, this 7.5-year cycle that I talked about last time I was here of Saturn being in the sign before the moon, of the moon, and following the moon, we're only halfway through that. So that's not over till the end of 2027. So we're almost 2/3 of the way through.
Right.
And this is always when there's tremendous reevaluation, tremendous questioning. The first 3 years of it, 2020 to 2023, when Saturn's 12th from the moon, guess what? This is when you feel lonely, restricted, financially stressed. That was the pandemic, right?
Right.
Saturn 12th from the moon is terrible for love, terrible for money. It's when there's a lot of outgo but not income. And so anyway, we're coming into the last phase of this long cycle, and so we're all still exhausted.
Right.
We're all still exhausted. But the U.S. chart is very resilient and very protected and ultimately optimistic. It's Sagittarius rising, one of the most optimistic signs.
Mm-hmm.
It's got Jupiter with the sun, which is very protected, safe, hopeful, and great for success. It's got Jupiter with Venus and Mars, great for success. The Jupiter-Mars combo is like the Midas touch combo. This is why we're the richest nation in the world. This is why you can be born any station in life and become, a big deal in in anything. So I think we're going to get through no matter who wins the election.
Right.
I think we're going to stay a country. I don't think it's the end of this country. I just think we have a lot to go through still, no matter who wins.
I want to support what you're talking about with Jupiter, okay? And Ed, if we can go overhead for a moment and show people this, because I'm going to illustrate what you're saying. Okay, so here in the natal chart of the United States is Jupiter, all right? Here's Jupiter in transit right now, and it's retrograde, and it will be until January, I believe. But Jupiter, like Carol said, is going to align with itself. Now, Jupiter realigns with itself every 12 years, all right? But this is the part that I want the viewers to understand. Jupiter does rule growth, luck, money, expansion, all right? So when Jupiter is in the last phase of the prior cycle, it's like a fuel tank, all right? And so that fuel tank is going very low. So the money fuel tank of the United States is almost on empty. Now, and this would occur in your personal chart too. So when Jupiter aligns with itself, as it will next spring, all right, and I don't have my ephemeris with me, but it's in around May, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
In sidereal astrology, it's mid-May of next year.
So we're very close to each other in this. So what will happen is when Jupiter aligns with Jupiter, the Jupiter return fills the money fuel tank again, and it brings life back to that. All right. So, but this is the chart of the country, which means the country benefits from this, the Jupiter return.
Love it.
There's renewal. And the other thing about Jupiter is, and it doesn't matter in Western or Vedic astrology, it has a lot to do with optimism. Jupiter is very buoyant, where Saturn is heavy, and Jupiter lifts people up.
I always say it's like if if we were to look at the Winnie the Pooh characters, Eeyore is Saturn, right? My house fell down. If I would just build another house, but it would just fall down.
Not much
too.
of a planet.
That's so good. Right. Whereas like Tigger is Jupiter. Tigger's like, woo! I'm the only one. Woo! Like Tigger is having a blast and he's psyched and he believes in himself. Eeyore's like, nothing I do matters anyway.
I've always thought that in Western astrology, Tigger would be an Aquarian, the way he's bouncing on his tail.
That's cute.
And and there are books that actually talk about that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, isn't there a book called the Tao of Pooh?
Yes, and the
right?
Tao of Piglet. They're so profound, actually. They're beautiful. Highly recommend.
That's cool. All right, so you and I agree on the movement of Jupiter assisting things.
Yes.
Now, in the Western chart, Saturn, which is heavy, okay?
Yes.
In retrograde right now is forming a square to the ascendant. And that's a roadblock. When Saturn squares the ascendant, people feel like the world is against them, okay? Now, Saturn is authority figures. So right now, what people are trying to accomplish, and by the way, in Western, the United States chart is a Sagittarian also,
oh, nice.
like yours. So for Saturn to be
Because
blocking...
we're using different times. We talked about that last time. We have a different time for the...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
you have
right.
5:10 and I have 7:30. So.
Right.
Right.
So, but we do agree so far.
Let's take it. Woo!
This is why people feel kind of oppressed at the moment with Saturn squaring the ascendant.
Yeah.
It feels like there is this massive wall that you can't get over, can't get around. And Saturn is retrograde until November the 12th, I think it is.
Okay.
And so it will begin to move forward. Now, when Saturn is retrograde, and it has been since June, one of the upsides of Saturn retrograde, because in Western astrology, the glyph for Saturn is the sickle of Kronos, the god of time. And so Saturn buys time. What I always tell people when Saturn's retrograde, don't panic, all right? Modify, adjust, do what you need to do so that when Saturn goes direct, you're ready to move forward with your plan.
Yeah. So get ready to get ready.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because it would be like, the plane's on the tarmac, it can't take off yet, but you better be on it because the engines are on. And once Saturn goes direct, flight attendants, take your seats, prepare for takeoff. Because it's going to go. And it will really go. So, and that will lift this sort of wall in the United States chart and allow things to move forward. And ironically, when Saturn goes direct, it's basically a week after the election. So could there be in this election an entire week before we know who wins?
I mean, last time it was 4 days. So, sure.
It could be longer this time.
I mean, why not?
Now, let's throw another wrench in the gears here.
Okay.
So Mercury goes retrograde on November 26th, all right? But the 3-week shadow period begins right on Election Day.
Okay.
You tell me. Mercury retrograde, people change their mind.
Ah.
Things with electronics start to go weird.
Huh.
Then the viewing audience is going, oh, God, not again. It's what happens.
Huh.
So be clear. If here's what I would tell people, and I haven't said this on the air yet. If you have the ability to vote now, pre-vote,
I was gonna say
then
that.
do that.
Right.
Because
Drop
if you
it
wait
off.
to that point,
Right.
you never know what's going to go on. Could the machines break down?
Well, you have to wonder how these horrible hurricanes are affecting people's ability to vote, right?
Right,
Like,
of course.
are they even going to care about the election when they're like scrambling to find their dog, right? Like, it's
Right.
such an intense time. I have a lot of clients very affected, and the stories I'm hearing are just unbelievable. And so there's that,
Right. And it is worse than what's being reported.
Right. And so we'll see. But that's really interesting. I hadn't so much factored that in. With Bush versus Gore,
Yes.
there's a technique that we do where we look to what planets are on the side of each candidate on election day. It's called Gochara. So you relate the transiting planets, the motions of the planets in the sky, on the day of the election, and you look to the time the polls close. And I was taught to look to the, Washington, D.C., because it's the capital of the country.
Right.
So you look at 8 p.m., Washington, D.C., and you look to where is Mars in relation to Donald Trump's moon sign, Mercury, Venus, where is it, how many houses away is it from his moon? And you do this for each one. Well, there are certain positions in relationship to the moon that the planets can be where they are blocked. And when it was Bush versus Gore, they both had a bunch that were blocked. And when they're blocked, they can't do their job. And that is not happening this time. So I don't know that we're ever going to see that again. So people think Mercury in retrograde is enough to make it total chaos in the streets and mayhem and madness, and it's not. I'm always
right.
Calm down. It's not that
right.
big of a deal. Yes, triple check all your affairs. And so what I would suggest with that being the first day is make sure you know your polling place.
Exactly.
Make sure you have your ID with you, make sure it's open the hours you blah, 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 all that.
Right. What I always tell everybody is that when it comes to the retrogrades, you can't buy into astrological paranoia. You still have to live your life.
Yeah.
Even though we're pointing out all this stuff. And at the time of the election, of course, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter, all retrograde.
Yeah. Jupiter retrograde's a big deal.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you could also, with Jupiter retrograde, you could also get a lot of people like, oh, I'm not going to go vote.
Right. Right. So.
You were saying something very fascinating before we went on the air, and about the youth, that don't have phones.
Oh, right. Well, a good friend of mine pointed this out because her nieces and nephews don't have phones. They just have Snapchat. And they're all in college. And I mean, they have phones. Every kid has a phone from the age of 6 months practically in America. And they're like this, not that I can throw any stones because so am I. But she says her nieces and nephews don't have phone numbers. She actually has to reach them on Snapchat. And so she's been saying there's no way to poll the young voter. There's no way to factor them into these polls. They also have lived their entire lives with phones and, smartphones.
Right.
And so they're not going to respond to a poll. They're going to go like, what? This is probably spam. This is probably a catfisher. This is probably a scam. Hell no, I'm not answering a poll. So I think the young vote, which is 80% for Kamala, is not being represented fully. That's just a sneaking suspicion that I have. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we have I think there are going to be a lot of unknowns going into this election. I think there are going to be a lot of surprises. In the way,
and why do you think that? What are you basing that on?
With what you were talking about with electronics, I think that there are a lot of, let's just say, factions. Whether race, culture, that come forward and may vote differently than what we thought they would.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I think that there's so many factors in here because when I look at it, and you kind of alluded this too, when I look at the charts of both candidates, this is going to be very close.
Oh, for sure.
There is no clear cut. We just go,
agree.
oh yeah, it's obvious this one's going to win.
Well, do you know what Chinese astrology says? Have you looked at Chinese astrology?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. It is so amazing because what you do is very complicated. What I do is very complicated. Listen to the simplistic beauty of Chinese astrology. Ready, everybody? And by the way, they can go down 85 levels too. So every year in Chinese astrology is a sign. And everybody born that year, but it's a lunar calendar. So it's like late January, early February to the following. So it's not, January 1st.
Right.
So this is a dragon year. This is a wood dragon year. There's elements, there's 5 elements, and there's 12 signs. And they, change every year.
Right.
The dragon year is very good for certain signs, and it's very bad for certain signs. Every sign has, an enemy. The enemy of the dragon is the dog. Now, when you are in your enemy year, you have setbacks, you have disappointments, you have problems, and great stuff is very hard to do in your enemy year. So here's where it gets amazing. Dragons in Chinese astrology are the most boundaryless, limitless, magical. It's the only mythical creature in their zodiac. Their zodiac is like a boar, a rat, a dog,
Right.
It's all like mundane, regular old animals. And then all of a sudden there's this fire-breathing, flying thing, right? That's like limitless. And I have to say, the people I know that are dragons are really magical people. Like they're really, I could go on and on. Anyway, here's the point. If you're a dragon in a dragon year, the wind is at your back. You are uplifted. You're going to fly over boundaries. You're going to be powerful because it's your year. Kamala is a dragon. Not only is she a dragon, she's a wood dragon. So, what about her running mate, Tim Walz? Guess what? Dragon also. Same year. So, she flew over boundaries. She never was in a primary. She wasn't in a debate.
Right.
She wasn't. All of a sudden, she kicked over like the wall and got to the gig or the candidacy, which sadly, why do women always have to do it some sideways way, right? So, and by the way, the U.S. chart has all masculine planets practically: masculine rising sign, masculine moon sign, masculine sun sign. So what do? We uplift men, and even Bangladesh has had a woman president. India, all these traditional cultures that are much more conservative. They've all had women run the show. So we're very late to this party. Okay,
Right.
So she's a dragon. Who did I say was the enemy of the dragon? The dog. Guess who's a dog? Trump. Trump is a dog. So 2024, what's happened to the guy? Oh, gee, I don't know, 34 counts of felony. Can't run a business in the state of New York anymore. 2 assassination attempts. He's having kind of a hard time.
Right.
And I hear he's a little upset that he's not up against old Joe, right? That suddenly there's this like hot, smart, unbelievably accomplished former, district attorney, like Secretary of State, like kicking his ass in debates, right? So when you're in your enemy year, you're at the back of the bus. And when you're in your year, you're driving the bus. So
Right.
so that alone makes me go, oh my God, Kamal's going to win. So then I look at Vedic, and we can talk about that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I already said we do these techniques where we look to the transits of the day and who has more planets on their team. It's like that simple, right? That's one of the things we do. So when you look at, and I made it very pretty for you all. This is my horrible handwriting. Okay, so when we look at Donald, how many planets are on his side the day of the election? Out of, and we only count 9, right? Or not even, hold on. The sun, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, and then the nodes of the moon. This is what we look to. So there's 8 things we consider. He only has 2 on his side that day. Kamala, 4.5. Now it's half because 1 can be blocked, and you only get half a point if it's blocked. Over twice what he has. So then we look at the running mates. JD has 2.5. Tim has 3. So he aces out JD. She aces out Donald. That's just one of the things we look to. And then we look to what's going on in other ways. So in her chart, she has, and we emphasize, like I said, what's going on from the moon. But both she and Donald, amazingly, are born on full moon days. A lot of kings throughout history, a lot of rulers born on full moons or new moons. Mm-hmm. It's very fascinating. So the moon is very powerful when it's full. Hers is full in the 11th house. It's blessing the 11th house. The 11th house is the second half of life. It's like 50 and up is the 11th house. So she's had some rise in station, rise in life. And we look to what are called planetary periods, just like I was doing with the U.S. She is in a planetary period of Rahu and a minor period of Venus. Venus is the greatest benefic in Vedic astrology. It's in the sign of Leo, the sign of royalty, right? Her day at her Democratic convention, that when she said the words "I accept your nomination," right? When she said "I accept the nomination," the sun was in Leo, and it was in a constellation of Leo, symbolized by a throne room. It's called Magha. It means the mighty one. And right there, you're like, ding, 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 right? But she has the sun in the fifth house. Fifth house is governing. It's politics. She has Venus as her planetary period, rules her fifth house, and it's in Leo. I mean, that alone is like, yes, 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 yes. She's in her Saturn return, so Lord of the Ninth in the ninth. The ninth house is like high office, the law. And so honestly, her transits are amazing. Her chart is fantastic. Now, here's one little wrinkle. Her rising sign in Vedic is at 1 degree 30 Gemini. If her birth time is off 3 minutes, this is a different chart. And that is very likely, right? Because was somebody really paying perfect attention with a stopwatch the minute she was born? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how much longer they wrote the birth time down. I don't know if they guesstimated. This is the scary thing about our jobs, right? This is part of the worst thing about what we do. So if she doesn't win, it means her birth time's wrong.
What do you have as her birth time?
I have her birth time. Okay, so I have her born October 20th, 1964. At 9:28 p.m.
That's what I have.
Yes.
I have the same time.
In Oakland, California.
Yep.
And I have him as born June 14th, 1946 at 10:54 a.m.
Yeah, I have the same thing.
In Jamaica, New York. So he has a totally powerful chart. He has a chart where there's this myth associated with his rising sign constellation, where it's like a villain in a movie where like you think they're dead, you think there's no way, you think like they've finally been vanquished, and then like their hand comes up and they're not dead, right? So
that's Michael Myers in Halloween,
yes,
the first Halloween
exactly.
movie.
So I don't mean to compare Trump or anyone to somebody in a horror film.
Halloween is orange.
Right. But he's got this kind of like ability to always prevail, always come back. Like every time you think, oh, there's no way he could come back from that, he does. So it's very hard to ever count him out.
Right.
But I will say he is in a planetary period of Jupiter and Venus. Now people think, ooh, wow, Jupiter and Venus, the two best benefics. Well, guess what? They're enemies. And Jupiter-Venus periods are commonly when people have tremendous losses and tremendous setbacks. They're not like, oh, yay, the good guy planets are both taking... No, it's like they're neutralizing each other. They're nullifying. Mm-hmm. Venus in his chart is 2 degrees from Saturn in his 12th house. The 12th house is incarceration and Saturn is restriction. Like, the guy's waiting on sentencing. And the truth is, it might not go so good for him. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he got house arrest or something. Mm-hmm. And then, so I can't see, how do you win when you're in a period like that? I mean, I just don't see how. But I can't wait to hear what you think. And I can go on and on with a whole bunch of other
and
reasons.
it's fascinating because the truth is we could sit here and really tear these charts apart, for hours on end.
For real. And if you go to YouTube, there are lots of videos of people spending a lot of time on this and being a lot more like covering way more territory. The other thing I did is I looked at the inauguration. Because you look at the date of an inauguration and you look at the chart and it describes what's going on with that.
Right.
So I looked at all of it. I looked at both. The day they throw their hat in the ring, I care about this the most, actually.
Right.
When they declare their candidacy. Whoever has the stronger chart then. Honestly, like whichever candidacy chart is stronger, his was really weak the day he threw his hat in the ring. And hers was middling, but his was really weak. When he accepted the nomination was weaker than when she accepted the nomination. You factor all of these things in.
Absolutely.
And then the inauguration chart, what's interesting is it has Venus, which is women, really powerful. In the 11th house with the Lord of the 10th. The 10th house is the president. And in the U.S. chart right now, the South Node is in the 10th house. The 10th house is the president, whoever's running the country, whatever country it is, it's the 10th house. When K2 or the South Node is there, there's some giant switcheroo. There's some giant upheaval. There's some big surprise. And a K2 person comes along, and that means somebody totally unusual, somebody totally different. A woman, brown, mixed race,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. In this really unconventional way, not going through primaries, not being, vetted in the normal way. So I think it's Kamala. I don't think it's sorry.
No apologies. Everyone is, and by the way, as we present what we're presenting,
Yes.
that doesn't mean we actually support. We're giving you what we see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So.
And truthfully, it's part of why astrologers struggle, because just to be the candidate, you have to have an amazing chart in an amazing time.
That's
with
right.
Powerful transits. So that makes it hard. And then your own emotional desires as a human being living in that country makes it really hard, right?
That's right.
So,
And when you get into things like it's probably 5 years ago now, that because I use numerology a lot too.
Yes.
And in the Super Bowl, at least 5 years now, when the New England Patriots with Tom Brady played the Philadelphia Eagles, I did a huge breakdown, which was put on Facebook. And I actually said that the Eagles would win that Super Bowl, and it was Tom Brady that would make the mistake that would lend itself to costing them the game, and that it was a substitute quarterback for the Eagles, Nick Foles. I said it's actually some kind of random thing happens with him that's going to cause the win, and I was 1,000% right.
Oh my God, how fun! That's so great. I love it.
So
I love it.
When the Rams were in the Super Bowl, because people have a tendency to take things out of their pocket and say the game's worth this much. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't support that kind of thing or do that. But with the Rams against the Bengals,
you were like, bookie, here's what I'm putting down.
I told some friends, Rams are going to win, but take the Bengals plus the points. I said, I was right.
Love it.
So
I had a mentor that would predict games and Olympics and all that stuff with astrocartography.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And he was astonishing at it.
A lot of people come to me for astrocartography. Should I move? And we look at the planet or where they want to move to.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Now, what I see here, okay, is that the United States, with the birthday being July 4th, let me slide this in, July 4th, this puts the United States in a 19 over 1 year. Okay, so this means we're in a time now of recycling.
Oh,
okay?
Start new beginnings.
Yes.
Ooh.
And when you take 19 in the month of November, which is 11, that becomes 30, and the election day is the 5th. It's 35-8, which means that is a day where the country realizes success.
Ooh.
Now, the number one in numerology, in ancient numerology, is male energy. It's the yang, okay? Now, Donald Trump, his birthday, June 14th, he is in a 28 over 1 cycle, all right? Which means that, and don't laugh when I say this, that a lot of women actually will vote for Trump that day, all right? So he's in a 1, and 1 is male energy. Now, when we get in years ahead where the number 2 starts to rule, that means the female energy comes into play. So what I'm saying is we're not at the point yet where a female is going to lead this country.
Okay.
Now, on the day of the election, all right, Donald Trump is in a 44 over 8 day, which means he's there to carry the load. He is successful, all right, and he's in alignment with that day. The country's in a 35-8, he's in a 44-8, and Kamala Harris is in a 54-9, which that's wavering up and down, okay? It's numerologically, it's actually a weak day for her. So The other thing, astrologically for her, in Western astrology, she has Saturn. Kamala is born with a Napoleonic Saturn, and I'm born with that too. That's Saturn on the midheaven, either in the 9th or the 10th house. And that means that you can't rest on your laurels. The issue with her, where Saturn is in transit at the moment, is that reality is going to get exposed. And as I said to you before the show started, that if you have a Napoleonic Saturn, you can't be running and looking over your shoulder like, look what I did, because you're going to run into something. My sense with her is that she is going to run into something where her, let's call it, lack of attainment or being able to say, hey, I did this, isn't there. So they're both very close. Trump has Jupiter in his 10th house then. He also has Uranus right on the midheaven at that time, which is something that's unexpected. And I think after deliberating for several days on this, following the election, I think he's going to edge her out.
Okay. Well,
Right.
we'll see.
Welcome to Point Counterpoint.
And what I just want to reiterate is I think
Yes.
we're going to be okay either way.
I think we are too.
I really do. I believe in America, and the chart of America ain't done.
No, and as both
It's not over.
as Carol and I both said, the country goes into a Jupiter return
Yes.
in next spring, and so that's a return to prosperity. So it's like the guides have said when we were talking earlier in the show, don't put your focus and attention on your fear that the wrong candidate is going to get elected, because changes are going to come next year that are beneficial to all of us. They really are.
Yeah, I think so too.
The other thing, realistically, Carol, also, is nowadays, how much is the president a figurehead?
Oh my gosh, well, that's a whole other show.
Right,
you
it
know?
is. So,
I mean, there's a lot of people that think it's the deep state that really runs everything. And, you know,
there's
I think it's the system. I don't think it's the deep state. I don't
It-
think it's some scary conspiracy or anything.
well, I think there is a system, and
Right.
and one individual doesn't have the ability to just determine the fate of millions of people.
Well, and if you study civics, you know the president is often very disappointed in how little they can really do
Right.
because they have to work with the different branches of government, and they have to get, you know, the Congress and the Senate to vote on something and before they can sign it into law. And so
Right.
it's a slow, rigorous process.
Yes, it is. And if no matter what party you're in, if you have the House, you have the Senate, and if Congress is not aligned with the president, then that makes it even harder.
Yeah.
So that, given that old phrase from the early 90s, why can't we all just get along?
Right. Because we have Mars in the 7th house. That's like fighting.
Yes, we're feisty.
And
We're feisty people.
We have Mars with Venus in the U.S. chart, and
Yes.
that's women and men fighting. You know,
Right.
that's conflict.
It's very
between
passionate.
Men and women. That's sexy. We're the
Yes.
porn capital. I believe we started the porn industry.
Oh my God. What a thing to be noted for.
Yeah. And then what else? We have 3 malefics in angles. We have Mars, Sun, Saturn. Like, this country is never going to be boring, and it's never going to be chill, and it's but live it or leave it, Nick.
Well, I think I'll stay.
I'm going to be in Mexico on election day.
Oh my God.
I may not come back.
Hey, that's your choice.
We'll see how it's going. We'll see.
In the Vedic chart of the United States, is Saturn in Virgo or in Libra?
It's in Virgo
Okay.
with Neptune in the 10th house.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Saturn's in Libra in
Interesting.
the Western chart.
Uh-huh.
But we are seen as leaders.
Yeah. Well, Saturn in Virgo is very strong, and Saturn in the 10th house is good. That's one of the best houses for Saturn to be in.
Oh my God, yeah.
And Saturn in Virgo is very, we're Puritans. We started from like religious religious zealots, let's
Right.
just face it. And Saturn in Virgo is very like right and wrong, and this is
Yes.
the way or else.
It's very
and,
righteous.
And that's part of why, as a country, we're very righteous, and it's part of why, truthfully, a big reason people are voting for Trump isn't because of Trump. It's because of Christian nationalism. It's because of that righteousness. They
Right.
want the country to go more that direction.
Right.
And that is a whole other show.
Right. No, the country is very divided right now.
Right.
This isn't one of those situations in elections in the last number of decades where, like Nixon, where it was just, a runaway.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I traffic in love, Nick. So my brand is called Love is in the Stars, and I like relationships, and I have a lot of friends on both sides of the aisle, and I
Yep.
like it that way, and I don't want to be in my own little bubble with only the people who agree with me. I want to hear what everyone else is thinking.
Exactly.
And so there's other astrologers in my,
Right.
feeds, and they will say things about, the charts. And because they often don't do the kind that I do, they don't know. So can we do a
course.
little quickie thing on why Trump is a cat?
Sure.
Okay. So I talk about how one of the most important things in relationships is capacity. Does each person have the capacity to be a good partner? So more important than are you compatible, before looking at are you compatible, you want to look at, is this person, I made the joke last time, a Jack Russell Terrier or a Golden Retriever?
Right.
Are they going to treat you well and be happy to see you and in a good mood? Or are they going to be a pain in the you-know-what digging up your backyard, right? So, pissing on the floor. So when we look at both of their capacity, Kamala versus Trump, I'm sorry, hers is way higher. And, if it really were to come down to who would you rather watch your kids, right?
Yeah.
But again, back to your point, we all vote selfishly. People that think, oh God, she wants to tax the stock market and your gains, even if you haven't cashed out on that. Like, people have good arguments for why they're
Sure.
uncomfortable with each person. And
That's right.
but in terms of capacity, so she has a capacity yoga where all her planets fall into 6 signs. And that is one of the most helpful, high character, honest, integral, generous, always happy. So much of what we see in her, right? Always in a good mood, blah, blah, blah. Well, he has a yoga that literally says, you sleep with women, not your wife. You are selfish. You are obsessed with work. You are worldly. And tendency for incarceration. It's fascinating because he never had that before, but here he is as an older guy, right?
Right.
So one of the things we look to for these capacity yogas is what is going on with the sun and the moon. So he was born with the moon full. However, it's the same degree as an eclipse point. The sun is, yes, in Gemini, which is great, but it's at 0 degrees. This is Vedically. And when
Right.
the sun is at 0 degrees in a man's chart, this is a weak sun. This is an afflicted sun. And it's just 2 degrees away from the North Node, even though they're in different signs. That's very important. So it's with Rahu, the North Node. And that makes a man self-obsessed, have addictions, which there's been a lot of rumors about Adderall and things. And that it makes a man extremely sensitive, very, very sensitive, giant personality, weak ego. And we see that when we see him, right? He's very easy to ruffle, and that's what she did in that debate.
That's right. That's right. She got
So
under his skin.
his sun and his moon, although the moon is full, are both very afflicted, and hers are not. So if your argument is you think he's a better guy, astrology totally disagrees. So anyway.
And a lot of people they don't look at all the politics. They do look at character like that.
Yes.
So that comes
Right.
into play too.
Right.
There's a lot, like you said, and we're going to have to close in a second. There are a lot of different things that people look at that they find important
Yes.
as to why they like one, and similar that they don't like that same person. They like this one.
Or they're-
things they don't like about this
grinning
one.
and bearing it, but they care about a policy, right? Or they care about a rule that the other person stands for, even though they don't like the person. So there's that too.
And I hear people saying things like, well,
Yeah.
the lesser of two evils.
Right.
So, well, it remains
Yeah.
to be seen. So, so there you have it. We both have our opinions astrologically on and numerologically on what we see. So, time will tell. You'll be in Mexico.
I'll be in Mexico with lots of umbrella drinks.
Wonderful. Carol, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me back. It was
Absolutely.
great. Thanks for watching, everybody.
And we will have you back again
I would love
down the road. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching as usual. This was a fun show. Remember, next week is Inanna, Gina Ann, Mary Elizabeth, and myself. Please tune in. The psychic panel is on the 26th. And the big anniversary show 2 weeks from tonight.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Lots of surprises. All right, good night, everyone. Thank you to Ed behind the scenes,
Thanks,
as
Ed.
always. And remember, everyone, please, please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. See you next week. Good night, everyone.